There are signs that Allah will grant victory to Islam in the Europe without swords, without conquest. We don't need terrorists. We don't need homicide bombers. The 50 plus million Muslims in Europe will turn it into a Muslim continent within a few decades. From Syria, Xinjiang, Rakhine, Kashmir, there is a pan-Islamism connect, and there is a demographics that addresses that pan-Islamism movement. If you remove the demographics of Muslims, then this pan-Islamism connect will fall to its knees. Demographic stability right now in terms of Indian civilization was challenged by convergence and immigrants. Availability of basic human needs challenged by population explosion and environment degradation. Centralized government structure is right now challenged by rebellion states. Population of all Indian born religions are declining. Not only Hindus, the population of all Indian born religions are declining. And I'll show you the stats regarding this. That here is the population percentage growth and population percentage. Hindus have come down to 79.8%, which is population percentage decline is 0.6%. 1.7%, which decline somewhere counts near around 0.2%. Buddhist 0.7%. Population decline percentage is 0.1. Jains 0.02%. So there is a decline in Indian born religions. And why I am pressing upon this point of Indian born religions? Because Indian born religions are the real repositories of Indian civilization. Once they're gone, there will be no Indian civilization. Hello, namaste everyone. This is Avinash Vasisht. Let me first introduce myself. That I am a law graduate from Aligarh Muslim University, and I have been enrolled as an advocate in Delhi Bar Council, and right now I am working as a legal associate for Srijan Foundation. And first of all, let me extend my gratitude towards Srijan Foundation and especially Rahul Diwanji. So my present topic is dangers of demographic change in India. So first of all, to address this issue, first we have to go some basics. So the basic question that first arises that what is demography? Demography is basically a game of numbers. In academic discourses, we used to call it quantitative study of population. Now, what does that mean exactly? Is if I would like to put it in a layman construct, then the entire edifice of demographic studies basically revolves around three questions: how far, how much, and how well. How much denotes the size of population, how far denotes the distribution, and how well denotes the composition of population. Now, as far as the subject matter domain of demographic studies are concerned, initially it is restricted to count birth and death rates, but then subsequently its scope has widened, and now we used to study a whole lot of issues which basically comprises urban congestion, labor force statistics, defense strategies, explaining economic slowdown, understanding geopolitical calculations. Now the next basic question arises that why demography is at all an issue. So I have two submissions. First, that for demographic stability is the predominant factor in the continuance of any civilization. And my second contention is that if a demographic change go unchecked, then it will trigger civil wars. Now, I don't want anyone to take my words for granted, so I have substantiated my contention with the observations of certain Greek and Roman scholars who have observed firsthand the fall of their civilizations. So first one is Polybus. He's a Greek historian. He wrote the histories. In that account, he observed that in our times, all Greece was visited by a dearth of children and generally a decay of population, owing to which the cities were denuded and inhabitants and a failure of productiveness resulted. Our men become perverted to a passion for show and money and the pleasures of an idle life, and accordingly either not marrying at all, or if they did marry, refusing to rear the children that were born. Next scholar which I would like to quote is Roman Emperor Augustus. He gave a very wonderful account on the fall of Roman civilization, and he basically made this observation regarding the fall of Roman civilization. We liberated slaves chiefly for the purpose of making out of them as many citizens as possible. We give our lives a share in the government that our numbers may increase. Yet you Romans of the original stock. Now I want your attention to this word original stock. Here this man Augustus is referring to our original Roman race. Then he proceeds that yet you Romans of the original stock, eager that your families and names at once shall perish with you. and this was the same man who subsequently brings a legislation to increase the birth rate in Roman nobility. So now you can understand that from the civilizational perspective how important this demographic stability is. And not only this, if you go by the accounts of economists, then some of them have predicted that the cause of Great Depression and Great Recession is demographic instability. And let me quote here Canadian economist Clarence Barber, who wrote on the causes of Great Depression that the stock market crash in October of the same year was preceded by a decline in demand. Barber argues that began with a lower formation of household concomitants with lower rates of marriage. So even from economic perspective, demographic stability is a very important factor. Now the second contention which I am raising here is that if demographic change go unchecked, then it will result into civil wars. And for substantiating that contention, I have just analyzed certain crises which are right now going on across the globe to demonstrate you that how demographic change can trigger civil war crisis. Now the first crisis which I would like to talk is the demographic crisis which is currently going on in Europe. Then I'll come to Syria and the rise of something about rise of ISIS. Then crisis in Yemen. Then I'll talk upon the Xinjiang conflict in China. Then I'll come upon Kashmir, Myanmar, and then Arab-Israeli conflict. So let's come to our first point, that is demographic crisis in Europe. So let me begin by the words of Muammar al-Gaddafi, who is a Libyan dictator. He made a very interesting observation on the demography of Europe. And his observation goes like this: there are signs that Allah will grant victory to Islam in the Europe without swords, without conquest. We don't need terrorists, we don't need homicide bombers. The 50+ million Muslims in Europe will turn it into a Muslim continent within a few decades. So now from his observation, you can understand that he was basically promoting a demographic change as a tool of war. And I'll show you that how this demography is right now currently changing in Europe. So first we have to understand that what is the basic standard of fertility rate in Europe. So as per the expert opinions and demographers, a bare minimum standard on which a civilized continuance of any civilization stands is 2.1. That is the basic standard fertility rate. Now if it goes down to 1.9 fertility rate, then historically it is not possible to reverse that cycle. And if it goes further down by 1.3, then it is almost impossible to fix that demography. Because it takes almost 80 to 100 years to fix that gap again. And there is no economic model in the world that can sustain a culture to that extent, to this time span period. Then let's do a reality check of European countries, their fertility rate. So France has fertility rate 1.8, England 1.6, Greece 1.3, Germany 1.3, Italy 1.2, Spain 1.1, and other European countries somewhere stood around 1.38. So now you can see, if you compare it with the bare minimum standard, which is 2.1, they are far below than this standard. So, but there is an interesting fact here that the population of Europe is not on decline, and the reason is Islamic immigration. All population growth censuses in Europe account that since 1990, that 90% has been the contribution of Islamic immigration. So now you can understand the gravity of immigration going on in Europe. If we take the test case France, then France native population is 1.8 per family. And if we see Muslim immigration fertility rate, then it is 8.1 per family. So now you can understand the gap. There is some more interesting facts about it, that 30% of children aged 20 and younger are Islamic. And in cities like Paris, that percentage has gone up to 45%. Southern part of France, which was known for churches, now outnumbered by Islamic mosques. As per the predictions, in the upcoming 4 decades, France will become a full-fledged Islamic state. Now if we talk about Germany, then the fertility rate of native Germans is far worse than what France is having. It somewhere stood around 1.3 per family. I'm talking about native Germans. Now German Federal Statistics Office has made a very catchy observation on this fertility ratio, that the fall in the native German population can no longer be stopped. Its downward spiral can no longer be reversible. It will be a Muslim state by 2050. Then I want to impress upon a meeting which was organized by 24 Islamic nations at Chicago somewhere around 2005 or 2006. Transcripts of that meeting somehow falls in the public domain, which revealed a sinister agenda of Islamization of entire America through planned immigration and by increasing fertility rates. That plan also reveals detailed plot to plant committed individuals towards Islam in journalism, politics, academia, and more. This is the documented fact of this meeting. In that same transcript, an observation was made that in upcoming 3 decades, there will be 30 million Muslims in America. So now you can understand that how this demography is used as a tool of war. Now I want to finish this European context with the words of Algerian president who was addressing UN in 1974. He made an observation that one day millions of men will leave southern hemisphere to go to the northern hemisphere, and they will not go there as friends, because they will go there to conquer it with their sons. The wombs of our women will give us victory. So here they are not talking about suicide bombers, they are not talking about weapons, they are talking about wombs of women. So you can understand that they are basically planning to just change the entire demography of Europe. Now if you compare this Gaddafi and this man, Algerian president Houari Boumediene, so there is a time span of 4 decades. Yet the consistency of making determination to Islamize the Europe remains same. So now you can understand that they are committed individuals and they are sitting on high offices. So when they are saying that their plan is to change the demography of Europe, then they must have some backup behind them. And now I just want to discuss the rise of ISIS also in terms of demography. Now if I conduct a short snap poll, what do you prefer to call this organization? I have 2 options for you: a terrorist organization or an Islamic terrorist organization. So and anyone who go by this option A, terrorist organization? No? So let's see in terms of demography how we figure out the terminology. So this is the map of Syria. Here are the areas which were captured by ISIS when it was at its peak in 2015. Aleppo, Raqqa, Mosul, Tikrit, Al-Qaim, Ramadi, Fallujah. All these areas were captured by ISIS. Now, if I ask you to guess how much time span it takes ISIS to capture these areas, what would be your answer? Huh? 1 month? No. That's... It takes only 1 year time span to capture all these areas. Now, the question arises that can this all be possible without a strong demographic calculation in your favor? No, it is not possible. And I'll show you what is the demography of Syria that favors the rise of ISIS. Composition of Syrian population: 85% Muslim population country. 75% among them were Sunni Muslims. Now, President Assad, who is the current president of Syria, he comes from an Alawite sect. Now, Sunni Muslims, hardliners, they don't consider Alawites as Muslims. Now, if you look at the model of governance of President Assad, he was trying to promote secular Arabism, which triggered the sentiments of Sunni Muslims, and they thought that it is the erosion of their power. So the flashpoint arises on the point that when this Assad government puts ban on the Muslim Brotherhood, it again triggers the sentiment of Sunni Muslims, and now they thought that there is no other solution just to pick up arms and just topple down this government. And this 75% Sunni Muslim population play a role of game changer in the rise of ISIS. So then we call this ISIS a Sunni Muslim terrorist organization. This is the correct terminology. It's neither a terrorist organization nor an Islamic terrorist organization. It is basically a Sunni Muslim terrorist organization. Now let's come to the crisis of Yemen. Now if you see the map of Yemen, the northern region is heavily dominated by Sunni Muslims and the southern part was dominated by Shia Muslims. Now there has been a domestic conflict going on for quite long, but this sectarian conflict was basically a conflict between Sunnis and Shias. And if you see the demographics of Yemen, the 90% of Yemen population is Sunni Muslims and 10% among them were Shia Muslims. So what happened? Both these groups are fighting with each other to claim that the right to form the legitimate government. And what escalates the crisis is that this Ali Abdullah Saleh, he was dominating this Sunni Muslim group. He was going to pray in a mosque, and one suicide bomber exploded the mosque. he somehow escaped to Saudi Arabia, and he asked them to intervene physically and to wipe out these Shia Muslims. And Saudians agreed. They bombed Shia dominated areas. Now what happened in response is that these Shia dominated groups, they approached to Iran and they asked them to intervene against Saudians. So now Iran has also joined this war. So this Yemen crisis basically a test case to show that how a certain demographic triggered the civil war crisis and brings geopolitics also into it. And if you talk about the casualty statistics, then as per the UN estimates, if this crisis will go on, then 40 million people will at the risk of starvation. Now let's come to the Xinjiang crisis. If we see the demographics of Xinjiang, then Uyghurs are 45.84% in population. Han Chinese are the second largest, which constitutes 40.48%, and then comes the ethnic minorities. If you want to understand the Xinjiang crisis, then first you have to understand the grievances of both sides. What are the grievances of Uyghur Muslims and what are the grievances of Chinese government? So the grievance of Uyghur Muslims is that there was a continuous demographic change in their area through Han migration. And their second contention is that there was an environmental and agriculture degradation going on, and there are lack of employment opportunities. So if you ask me that how far I see their contentions is, so I will tell you that yes, their first contention, that is that Han migration is going on in their area. Yes, that's true, because stats tell us that from 6% in 1945, Han Chinese population has grown up to 45% by 1980 in this Xinjiang Uyghur region. Now, if you look this problem from the perspective of Chinese government, then the basic contentions which Chinese government have is that first there is an issue of cultural assimilation. Now, what does that mean? That Uyghur Muslims are not looking to assimilate with the culture of Han Chinese, which is the mainstream Chinese population culture. Second contention of Chinese side, government side, is that there is a connect of pan-Islamism with this Uyghur Muslim population. And what is pan-Islamism? Pan-Islamism is a political ideology of Islam which talks about establishment of Islamic caliphate across the globe. It has its connect from Turkey, but if you go by the historical genesis of this pan-Islamism idea, then it dates back since the advent of Islam. Because if you look at the military expeditions of Prophet Muhammad, then this idea is very much visible in his military expeditions. And this idea of pan-Islamism get a setback somewhere around 1967 when these Muslim countries lost their war in the 6 days war with Israel. Now they felt a setback, but in 1990 there was a revival of this idea again. And Turkey took a lead to just fantasize this pan-Islamism and try to build a network of Islamic jihad across the globe. Now the third contention which Chinese government has is that nexus of global terror organizations. Now you might have come across a recent attack on Chinese embassy in Pakistan, which was conducted by militants of Pakistani origin, and the reason they give behind that attack is that, look, China is oppressing Uyghurs, so we are justified in attacking Chinese embassy. So there is a global nexus also running behind the scenes. And then we have a fourth contention of Chinese government is that geopolitics. Chinese have witnessed Chechenian crisis in Russia. And they understand, it's a well-documented fact that in Chechnya, there was an involvement of foreign jihadists there. It's a well-documented fact. So Chinese are basically fearing that if we not suppress this Uyghur movement, then it may connect with a global jihadist network, and then this Uyghur problem will also stand similar to this Chechenian problem. And then fifth contention of Chinese government is law and order issue. So basically, if you look at the Xinjiang crisis, there was a demographic angle behind it. So that's what triggers the suppressing action of Chinese government. Then if I put demographics in the context behind this pan-Islamism movement, then diagram looks like this. From Syria, Xinjiang, Rakhine, Kashmir, there is a pan-Islamism connect, and there is a demographics that addresses that pan-Islamism movement. If you remove the demographics of Muslims, then this pan-Islamism connect will fall to its knees. So if you look all these crises, there is a demographics that is answering that pan-Islamism connect. Now, food for thought here is that, is there any country which has successfully tackled this pan-Islamism effects on its demography? There is no country but one, and that is Israel. And how Israel fixed that demographic connect is that Israel since 1950 passed a law called Law of Return, allow Jewish immigration to freely settle in Israel anytime and any place. In 1970, Israelis have brought in this law. So this law says that if you have an ancestry of a Jew, then you can come and settle in Israel. So that's how this scope has broadened up. In July 19, and recently in July 19, 2019, Israel made a significant change in her constitution, departed away from secular character of the state, declared Israel as a full-fledged Jewish ethnic state. So now you can see that how Israel is determined in terms of laws to fix this issue of demography. Now the overall impact of these legislation is that the immigration of Jews is on rise, fixing of fertility rates, promotion of Jewish values and culture. Over the past decade, the Muslim annual population growth has fallen, and overall Jewish growth rate rose from 1.4% to 1.7%. So now you can see that how legislation can work to fix the demography of Israel. And even if you go by the stats, demographic stats of Israel, then in year 2000, Jewish population growth is somewhere around 2.66%, and Muslim population is around 4.74%. But with the impact of these all legislations, this demography has now been fixed, and as per the 2018 census, Jewish population has risen up to 3.7%. which somewhere almost stood equally around Muslim growth rate percentage, that is 3.20. Now food for thought is that, since I'm talking so much about these conflicts and war, is there any correlation between these wars and demographic change? Yes, there is a correlation, and the correlation stands on the point that in non-conflict zones, demography shapens very gradually, so it doesn't come in our notice. But in war conflict zones, this demographic pace is much faster, and it comes in notice almost immediately. So the correlation stands on the point that war is nothing but a demographic change, but at a faster pace. And the textbook reference in the present time is Rohingya crisis. You can see that overnight how the demography of Rakhine state has changed. Now, since I began my presentation from talking from civilizational construct, so let us examine that what are the standards on which civilizational existence breeds. There are basically 6 factors, and those factors are demographic stability, obviously, and then second one is availability of basic human needs, that is food, shelter and water, and then third one is centralized government, and the fourth one is social unity, fifth one is division of labor, and sixth one is viable economy. Now if you draw a reality check on Indian civilization, then it looks like this. Demographic stability right now in terms of Indian civilization was challenged by convergence and immigrants. Availability of basic human needs challenged by population explosion and environment degradation. Centralized government structure is right now challenged by rebellion states. For example, if you take the current example of NRC, then this West Bengal government recently, Mamata Banerjee, come up with a statement that, look, we are not going to implement this NRC, do whatever you want to do. So that's again a sort of conflict going between centralized form of government and then state rebellions, and I don't see a possibility that this conflict will minimize. It will further increase in the near future. And then we have the social unity parameter, which was right now facing a challenge on the point of Naxalism and Islamism. Now if you generate a culminating effect of all these 4 factors, then it will certainly going to have a negative impact on economy. So out of those 6 factors, the only one factor which is right now surviving is division of labor. Yes, we have that, and it is beyond any question. Now here the question arises that, did India has ever witnessed the consequences of demographic change in the past? What would be your answer?
Yes.
Sir?
In Chittagong hill tracks, the entire population wanted to be...
No sir, any particular major incident? Anything more of gravity? Yes, we do. Okay, fine, I'll settle the question. Yes, we do have witnessed, and we have witnessed it in the form of partition of India. Now if you go by the casualty statistics of partition of India, then we have deaths 1 to 2 million, displaced about 10 to 12 millions, missing 2 millions, rapes 75,000 to 1 lakh, and they were underreported. Abduction 60,000. So this is the cost we have paid in terms of demographic change, and yet we are going to repeat this mistake again. Food for thought is why Indians are still so ignorant about the changing demographics in India. Since we have paid such a huge cost, then why still we are ignorant about this demographic change? Now there are certain factors that are responsible for this ignorance, and those factors are: first, demographic change is a slow phenomena, which I have already mentioned in my previous slides. It acts in a subtle way but behind the scenes, so it is not easily traceable, or it doesn't come and notice very immediately, unless some big change you see in terms of demographic change. Then media misleads. Now I ask you a question that regarding this rise of ISIS, how many articles have you read which shows that there is certain demographics in Syria which is escalating this crisis? At least I have read no article. So there are media misleads also and eyewashes. Then lack of subject-centric data. By lack of subject-centric data, I mean, if I ask you that give me a data on real-time data on convergence in India, are you able to give that? No, because there is no subject-centric data on that. Then we have the fourth reason, that is lack of academic connect. You might have come across the statement of the Army Chief Bipin Rawat, who has made a comment on the changing demographics of Assam, and outrightly his statement was branded as that he was playing some politics and he was acting as a spokesperson of BJP and RSS. If there is an academic connect which can substantiate his statement with some data, then nobody will take that as his statement. So you can understand that there is a lack of academic connect with the strategy policy planning also. And then the fifth cause is that fear among academicians. Our academicians fear of being bullied and branded with certain ideologies. That's another reason. And the last one is lack of civilizational importance among Indians. Look, Jews have lost 6 billion people and they have their grand narrative called anti-Semitism. We have lost around 200 to 300 million people in foreign invasions. Where is our grand narrative? There is no grand narrative. Why we don't have a grand narrative? This is because of lack of civilization sense in our people. Then let's come to the census on Indian population. As per government census 2011, India has a population of around 1.2 billion people. Now I have two news to share with you here. One is bad, another one is good. The bad news is that we are already a population of billion people, and this number is keep on rising. As per the UN estimates, by 2030 we will outgrow China in terms of population. And the gravity of population explosion could be understood from the fact that absolute addition to the population in the recent decade 2001 to 2010 is slightly lesser than Brazil population, which is 5th most populous country in the world. Now the good news is that although India continues to grow in size, but its pace of net addition is on decrease. The rate of growth between 2001 and 2011 represents sharpest decline over a decade since independence, and that sharpest decline somewhere stood around 17.64%. Now, before celebrating this news that we are declining in terms of growth rate, first we have to understand that what is this growth rate. So I am just giving you a glimpse of calculation of that how we calculate this growth rate. So if we take the population census of 2001 and 2011, then what we have to do in order to calculate this growth percentage, we have to subtract population census of 2001 from the population census of 2011, and the resultant we got is in the green box. You can see that. Now what we have to do is that this green box, we have to divide this green box figure 2001 population census, and the resultant we have to obviously multiply it by 100 to get the percentage. So this is how we get the percentage. And if you want to calculate an annual growth percentage, then you have to simply divide it by 11. So that's how we got this 17.6% growth rate. Now, before celebrating this news of that we are declining in terms of growth rate, first we have to understand that who is actually declining in terms of growth rate. So I have gathered some census data religion wise. So you can see that Hindus are constantly declining since 1951, though I have not covered it in my slides due to some space problem, that Hindus are declining constantly, and in 2011 their growth rate percentage somewhere stood around 6.76%, which has come down from 19.92%. Now Muslims, as far as Muslims are concerned, till year 1991, their growth rate percentage was on increase, but since 2001, their growth rate percentage is also on decline, and it is on the sharpest decline ever before the independence. Now, this decline in Muslim population is read by media as somebody who is raising concerns about population rise of Muslims as some BJP RSS propaganda. And I can show you the media reports. Just read the headlines. What the data tells us: are Muslims responsible for India's population growth? Not quite. 4 out of 5 Indians will still be Hindus even when Muslim population at peak. Minority reports: Muslim families shrinking fastest among Indian communities. Drop in fertility rate among Indian Muslims and the impact of girls' education. I have gone through all these media reports, and they are giving an impression that this demographic crisis problem in India is just a BJP RSS propaganda and nothing. So I want to debunk this media projection, and I have noted down my objections on it, on this media projection, and those objections are this. If you see the religion-wise stats of growth percentage population, then first, in case of Muslim, the average count is missing. I'll show you that table again. This is the religious-wise data, and you see since 1981, or even Hindus are declining since 1951. You can see there is a consistent decline. But in terms of Muslim population, the decline has been observed only after 2001. So the average count is missing. If you count the average of population percentage growth rate, then the difference somewhere stood around 9%. In terms of average growth count, the difference is in Hindu growth percentage and Muslim growth percentage. So you can see that average count is missing, which media obviously didn't tell you. And then we have my second objection is that consistency in decline is missing. Again, that consistency aspect, that not only the average count but the consistency is also missing. Now let's come to another point, that is population of all Indian born religions are declining. Not only Hindus, the population of all Indian born religions are declining. And I'll show you the stats regarding this, that here is the population percentage growth and population percentage. Hindus have come down to 79.8%, which is population percentage decline is 0.6%. 1.7%, which decline somewhere counts near around 0.2%. Buddhist 0.7%, population decline percentage is 0.1. Jains 0.02%. So there is a decline in Indian born religions. And why I am pressing upon this point of Indian born religions? Because Indian born religions are the real repositories of Indian civilization. Once they're gone, there will be no Indian civilization. And this is the graph which I have made to show this population decline. You can see that this blue color mark is basically Hindu population percentage previously, and now it has come down to this red mark. And same is the projection in case of Sikh, Buddhists and Jains. Though they are declining at the pace of 0 point something, then so it is not quite more visible in this graph, but yes, they are declining, that's the fact. Now, as per 2011 census, Hindus are already in minority in 8 states. 2.5% in Lakshadweep, Mizoram 2.75%, Nagaland 8.75%, Meghalaya 11.53%, Jammu and Kashmir 28.44%, Arunachal Pradesh 29%, Manipur 31.39%, Punjab 38.40%. Now, again a question arises that what is the status of Hindus in other states? We are clear about this data. Now, what is the status of Hindus in other states, especially the volatile one? Are they declining there too? So I have just noted down data from since 2001 census of the volatile states in terms of demographic change. And those states were first is Uttar Pradesh. You can see that Hindu population is on decline. From 80.61%, it has come down to 79.73%. But in case of Muslim, it has risen up from 18.49% to 19.26%. And then we have Bihar. In Bihar, Hindu population is on decline. 83.68% to it has come down to 82.68%. But in case of Muslims, they are on rise. 16.53% to 16.86%. And mind you, even 0.1% will make a difference, because we are talking here numbers in crores. So you can understand it. Then we have Kerala. Hindu population is on decline. It has come down from 56.16% to 54.72%. Then we have Muslim population, which is again on rise, 24.69% to 26.56%. Then there is Assam, 64.88%. Hindu population has come down to 61.46%. Muslim population has risen up from 30.91% to 34.22%. So you can understand the gap here. With the passage of time, this gap increases, more volatile these states will become. Now there is West Bengal. Hindu population has come down from 72.47% to 70.53%. So in case of Muslims, that population has risen up from 25.24% and to 27.07%, and there is no need to tell that what is going on in West Bengal right now. Now come to the aspect of Christianization of northeast of India. Demographics of northeast had witnessed a sweeping demographic change in terms of Christian population growth. The growth rate percentage of Christians in northeast India is way high than usual. And to judge that situation, first we have to make a standard, that on what basis standard we are going to judge the population of Christian population in northeast. So I have taken Kerala as a base standard case. So this is the population census of Kerala in 2001, then 2011. I have calculated the growth rate percent, and it somewhere stood around 1.38%. Now if we see that situation in northeastern states, Arunachal Pradesh growth rate somewhere stood around 103.7%. Now you can compare 1.38 with 103.7%. See the gap. Then Mizoram. In Mizoram, their growth rate percentage is 23.7%, which is again way high than usual when we examine it as the base standard of Kerala. Now Manipur, 59.88%, Meghalaya 35.8%, Sikkim 67.5%. So now you just compare it with the base standard 1.38%. Now you can understand the gap, at what pace this Christianization of northeast is going on. And if I show you it through a graph, then here Kerala lies as the base standard, and that blue line depicts the base standard on which a population growth rate should be, and this is the graphs for northeastern states, graph bars. So you can understand the gap. It is easily visible in the graph. Now whenever I talk about demographic changes across India, I frequently asked with the question that what if Muslims goes in majority? Why is that a problem at all? So let me quote recent BSF report which was submitted in year 2018 to Home Ministry, and BSF has observed trend of demographic change in Jaisalmer area of Rajasthan. Now the observation which BSF has made in its report are quite alarming, and those observations are this: increasing radicalization of Muslim population in border districts of Jaisalmer, Pokhran of Rajasthan state, departure of traditional Rajasthani culture, and then rising prevalence of Arab culture, Arab customs, shrinking dialogue between communities. I want your attention on this point, shrinking dialogue between communities. A study also found a high 22 to 25% growth rate in Muslim population as compared to 8 to 10% of the other communities. So the native population percentage is going by this pace, 8 to 10%, while the Muslim population percentage is going by that pace, 22 to 25%. Now you can understand the gap here. Now another observation which BSF has made is that Pokhran and Mohangarh of Jaisalmer have seen frequent visits of Muslim clerics, especially from Deoband, Uttar Pradesh. Now that apparently doesn't sound a problem at all, but when you understand that what they are trying to do there is quite alarming. And BSF has quoted that these clerics are reported to preach Islamic fanaticism and seek to unite Muslims as a separate identity with feeling of paramountcy of religion. So that's where they are poisoning their minds towards their native culture. So they are pumping a sort of religious supremacy in them, that look, you are superior and those native traditions are far more inferior than you. So they are poisoning their mind, and that's where the problem stands. Now I want to discuss our Army Chief Bipin Rawat's remark on Assam. I have discussed it in my previous slides, but I will discuss here in some detail that on February 21st, a seminar was conducted titled Bridging Gaps in Border Security, organized by Center for Joint Warfare Studies and Integrated Defense Staff. Army Chief made a very catchy remark that planned immigration is happening in Assam. Now, this gentleman Badruddin Ajmal outrightly branded his statement as he was playing some sort of politics, and he is the acting like a spokesperson of BJP and RSS. Now, I want to discuss the factual standpoint of Army Chief's remark. So, the planned Muslim infiltration in Assam to alter demography, to alter its demography, is going long before partition. And I have put the stats since year 1881. In 1881, the population percentage of Muslims is 9%. In 1931, it risen up to 19%, and in 1941, it risen up to 23%. If you go by the subdivisions, then the stats are more shocking. For example, in Barpeta subdivision, Muslims were just 0.1% of the population in 1911, but they have risen up to 49% by 1941. So you can understand that at the minor level how this demographic change is shaping very sharply. Now let me ask you a question. Do you know this man? Any idea about him? He is the key brain behind changing the demography of Assam. Any clues? Okay, fine. Let me solve the puzzle. He was the Prime Minister of Assam region during British India. His name was SM Sadullah. He served 5 times as a Prime Minister of Assam region. This is from 1937 to 1946. He was basically an Islamic hardliner, a poster boy of Britishers. He joined hands with Muslim League in 1937, supported cabinet mission lobby that would have placed Assam in Pakistan. Original map of, if you see the original map of Muslim League before 1947, it includes all northeast India in Pakistan. Now, what this SM Sadullah actually did? Sadullah has given given a proposal to Britishers that look, I'll import from East Bengal Muslims in masses to grow more foods during Second World War, and obviously Britishers accept that proposal happily. Now later on, both Congress and the then Viceroy, this Lord Wavell, they realized that it was actually not grow more food policy. It was actually grow more Muslim strategy. I'll show you that why it was a grow more Muslim strategy. From year 1939 to 40, that's 1 year of span, 1 lakh bighas in Brahmaputra Valley were given to these migrants, which this man has imported. So it is not only China who has eye on northeastern region, but even Islamic hardliners and pro-Pakistani lobbies, they also have eye on this northeast region of India. Now, how Congress supported this blunder? Congress gave voting rights to 4 lakh Muslim immigrants during 1983 assembly polls. So, and now when, they are shouting on the streets, agitating against NRC and this CAB. So that's a wonderful hypocrisy. You can see it. And when this Congress has given voting rights to these 4 lakh Muslim immigrants, immediately thereafter Nilai massacre followed. Any idea about this Nilai massacre? Oh, okay. It cost 3,000 lives. 3,000 people were butchered like animals in this Nilai massacre, and the blood is still on the hands of Congress. So this Nilai massacre followed, and there was a commission called Tiwari Commission. It was set up to find and probe this Nilai massacre, and this Tiwari Commission has submitted 600-page report to the then Congress government. Congress committed another blunder. Congress hushed up that report. There is a fun fact here that this gentleman Badruddin Ajmal, he has moved in Assam High Court to open up the findings of this, to ask that this Tiwari Commission report must be made public. Now this same gentleman is now saying that what Army Chief is saying that is simply politics. This man actually knows that what is actually happening in Assam in terms of demographic change, and he is pretending as an innocent. He is the man who lodged a petition in the court asking that Tiwari Commission report should be made public, and now he is saying that whatever concerns Army Chief is raising in terms of demographic change in Assam is a plain politics. So you can see that this man is outrightly lying. Now then again, there was another blunder committed by Congress. that this after this Nilai massacre, Congress come up with a law called Illegal Migrants Determination of Tribunals Act 1983, which almost made impossible to deport these outsiders. So blunders after blunders committed by Congress. What has the consequences of these blunders? You can see that it encouraged Bangladeshi intruders to spread not in not in Assam but to the entire northeastern region. And ISI recruited these migrants to make an inroads in the groups like ULFA, this United Liberation Front of Assam. It is, if you see the recent reports, this group ULFA is involved in this agitation of NRC also. So you can understand that how this nexus is building up. So that's how this whole demographic story is going on in Assam since independence. There is one more shocking fact here is that if you go by the Bangladesh population census 1991, then it accounted that almost around 6 million people are missing from the country. Now you can imagine where they have gone. And there was one gentleman called B.B. Kumar. He has wrote a book, Illegal Migration from Bangladesh. You must read this book. He has quoted this fact in this book. Now, did anyone try to correct this blunder? Yes. Finally, Supreme Court comes to our rescue. In year 2005, Supreme Court struck down this Illegal Migrant Determination by Tribunal Act 1983 for endangering the security of Northeast and reducing the local people to a minority in some districts. Now, this gentleman Badruddin Ajmal has raised another contention that those who are in power and who have been in power must explain what is the BSF and army doing. So now the question arises that did no one raise objection on this blatant illegal immigration before Bipin Rawat? So there were series of warnings even before the warning of Bipin Rawat, and those warnings are these. In 1998, Assam Governor General S.K. Sinha sent a 42-page report to the president regarding an ISI plot called Operation Pin Code to grab the chicken neck Siliguri corridor and cut off the northeast from India. Then in 2005, West Bengal Governor Gopal Krishna Gandhi warned President APJ Abdul Kalam that the state of Assam was sitting on the infiltration time bomb. Then in 2011, Home Secretary Madhav Godbole estimated there are 1.5 crore aliens across this northeastern region, which has infiltrated from Bangladesh. So what Army Chief has said about the demography of Assam was correct, and it has a perspective behind it. Now the question of concern here is that is there any initiative from government side to address this demographic challenge? If we talk about present government initiatives, then we have these 4 initiatives. The first is NRC, which you already aware about. Then there is this CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, and then we often heard about these anti-conversion laws. Fourth one is this population control law, though it has not yet implemented, but a lot of BJP ministers are talking about it. So I have my objection of these government initiatives, and my objection is this. The problem is both in positioning and approach. Suppose there is a building facility, and that building facility is C, and suppose it is facing a water supply problem. Now the building management society has called a mechanic to fix the water supply problem. Source is there at A point, and now what the mechanic who come to fix the problem, he stood at the top at that point B and try to fix the water supply problem. Will he solve this problem? No. That's what exactly Indian government is right now doing. Now what should be the solution? If I take Israel as a test case, see you can see the map. The green portion represent the Arab settlement. When Israelis in 1950 they have done this, they have bring this pro-immigration law. Now what they are doing is they have devised a proper settlement plan. They are settling their immigrants in a proper way near these Arab areas, so that the demography of this area get changed. So do we have that sort of plan? So there are real problems existing here. So the solution is basically dual approach based solution. First is that something has to be done on the part of the government, and something has to be done on the part of society as well. Now what has to be done on the part of government? First we have to fix the constitution, and then we have to take these corrective measures which we are going in the name of NRC, CJA and all. Now it reminds me an old saying of Mark Twain that if your job is to eat 2 frogs a day, then always go with the bigger one, because if you go with the bigger one, your subsequent journey will become easy. And here the bigger frog is constitution, not those corrective measures which they are bringing with this NRC and CA idea. Now once you generate this constitutional cover, the picture looks like this. Now there is an umbrella cover of constitution, and under that umbrella cover you are bringing legislative enactments. So now if somebody suppose there was a government change and they try to minimize the effect of this legislation, then they are directly protected by constitution. So it is not very easy then to minimize the effect of these legislations. But right now the situation is like this. They are prone to get their effect minimized. That's my submission. Thanks Srijan Foundation again. Thanks Rahulji for motivating me.